Okay, so today's show really has a little bit of everything. From Ryan Murphy's new legal drama, All's Fair, starring Kim Kardashian, which is getting some of the worst reviews for a TV show I've maybe ever seen, to Rose Byrne's If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, which is one of the most critically praised films of the year. There's a lot to get into, so let's do it. I'm Amil Niazi, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Roxana Hadadi, Teri Hart, and Jackson Weaver are here. Welcome back to the show.
Hello.
Hello.
All right, let's kick things off with this.
It's our own boutique. Women representing women.
We're not the only ones to suffer abuse. Plenty of women inflict it. Don't they? That's bitter. Just like all the women who own this joint.
I mean, whew, just shivers down my spine. That is a bit of the trailer for the new legal TV drama All's Fair, about an all-female divorce firm. It stars Naomi Watts, Tiana Taylor, and a slew of other big names, including Kim Kardashian. Okay, Teri, it's a Ryan Murphy show, like I mentioned. The first few episodes dropped earlier this week. What are you thinking about this show?
Well, I was trying to think of something like quippy and fun and rhymey and something to say about
Yeah.
All's Fair. And then I realized that it just doesn't deserve that much space in my brain to figure out. Like, I really, really think this is bad. You have to imagine that some of those names you mentioned, Emil, Naomi Watts, Glenn Close, Tiana Taylor. I mean, you saw that anybody who's listening, like you see in the video, they name all the superstars in it. You have to imagine they signed on to this without reading a script because the dialogue is just terrible. If I'm being my most generous, you mentioned Ryan Murphy. In my most generous spirit, I can suggest that maybe he was going after kind of an homage to those 80s evening soap operas like Dallas and Knots Landing and that. But that's my vintage. I know what that is. And this is not it. This is not it. I would say it's pretty much one of the worst TV shows I've seen come out in a long time.
Oh, Teri, I disagree, but I want to get into that in a minute. Roxana, I mentioned this is Kim Kardashian's first leading role. I imagine that's what a lot of the buzz is. You know, we want to see, or maybe I certainly want to see Kim in a dramatic role. She does have a little bit of experience with a role like this. She's been studying to become a lawyer in real life. She obviously has plenty of experience with divorce. Does any of that help with her performance here? What do we think about Kim K's leading turn?
I don't think it necessarily helps. I do think that she is. Now, I will say, I actually am like enjoying this show. I think it's like pretty fun and trashy and it knows exactly what it is. But I do think that Kim is not necessarily the glue holding it together, although she certainly has a lot of experience like within the reality TV space. She's played herself for a long time, right? Like she has projected a certain public image. There is performance in reality TV. And I think that more than anything, she's just sort of playing a version of herself.
Yeah.
I just don't think the depth is there, but that's also why the show is like stacked with an ensemble and it has guest stars. It has that like nip tuck Dr. Odyssey quality where each episode is a different case, which allows each episode to have a different guest star, which allows each episode to sort of turn away from Kim. So no, I don't think she's giving like a great performance. But I also don't know that this show requires great performances. To be fair, I think like the visceral delights of watching this show are sort of separate from the actual performances within it.
Yeah, it's a bit like gorging on candy, I feel like, which, you know, post-Halloween, I'm definitely there. Jackson, you know, Ryan Murphy is known for these sort of camp productions. For a lot of critics, it worked on shows like Glee, Pose, American Horror Story. Roxana mentioned Nip Tuck. Why do you think it's not working for them here? Like, where has Ryan sort of fallen short with All's Fair?
I'll say part of it is he has kind of a duplicitous or like a dichotomy in how he presents his shows, and the ones that I watch are more the true crime ones, the monsters, the American crime story, the American sports story, even the Watcher a little bit. Those are simple, but they also have a little bit more depth to them. They've been knocked for being a little bit sensationalist and taking people's stories and kind of perverting them just for entertainment. I think this is much lighter. It's not offensive in any way, but I also think it's a little bit inert in that sort of way. There's not really a story. They're just kind of a series of events happening and girl bosses being girl bosses. That to say, this just isn't really necessarily for me. It's not a format that I watch a lot, so I didn't enjoy it, but that's not saying that format is bad in any way. I grew up watching All My Children over my mom's shoulder because she was obsessed with it. And I was like, I love Greenlee, so I know a little bit about that. I do think that this was made as almost like a love letter to that sort of show, but I don't think there was any effort to like elevate it, to make it more interesting, to give it more depth. So I think it just kind of falls a little bit flat, at least for me, but I do think that it does have an entertainment value. I will definitely give it that.
Yeah, Roxana, I mean, it's almost like more like Passions than General Hospital, which was a show that was so over the top, so camp that it almost couldn't be critiqued because it just was what it was. And I went in meaning to just watch one episode and binged all three and thought, oh, this isn't so bad. To me, it's like Ryan Murphy is a genre of his own at this point. You know, like, is there even good or bad when it comes to his types of shows?
That's such an interesting question. I mean, for me personally, I do think the things like Monster, I find like actively damaging to society.
Mhm.
You know, like I genuinely think something like Monster, the Ed Gein story is like completely misguided and like incredibly exploitative and sensationalistic. Like that to me, I almost feel like when Ryan Murphy is attempting to make larger cultural analysis is when I'm like, I don't want this at all. Like you're not the person that I trust to tell me about why true crime is damaging the American psyche because you're doing it also, right? Like there's an inherent hypocrisy there, which I find really frustrating. But like All's Fair is just, I can't get that worked up about it, I guess, because I think like girl boss television is everywhere. It is a strong genre. The Diplomat is in this, right? Like all these other sort of prestige shows, which center around like women doing women things, like are everywhere. So I guess I can't get that mad at All's Fair because it taps into that quality, as I mentioned again, of like what I think is Murphy at his best, where he can put together like a 20-minute storyline, just 20 minutes. That's it. That's an episode of television. And then when you're done with it, each episode resets and moves on to something else. And that to me is the strength of All's Fair, right? Like I don't have to think too much. Exactly like candy. I'll watch it. It'll be delicious at the time. And then I'll have a stomach ache and then a new episode starts again.
Exactly.
So it's just, that's the cycle. Yeah.
I love it. We have to leave it there. You can catch All's Fair streaming now on Disney+. My name is Amil Niazi. I'm sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Roxana Hadadi and Jackson Weaver and Teri Hart are here. Now we're going to switch gears to this.
Cheryl mentioned that you're a writer.
I don't do that anymore.
Stuck for inspiration?
I'm stuck between wanting to do something and not wanting to do anything at all.
What is your book going, by the way?
Main character is about to batter her husband to death with a hammer.
Shut
That's a bit of Die My Love, the new film starring Oscar-winning actor Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson. Teri, certainly a different vibe than All's Fair, we'll say. What is the story here briefly?
So Die My Love is about a young couple who moved to a small town into an inherited kind of dilapidated house, and they have a baby. The mom, Grace, played by Jennifer Lawrence, starts to unravel. Dad, Jackson, played by Robert Pattinson, doesn't do anything really to help, and the situation gets increasingly dire for everybody involved. It's a tough watch with really great performances that didn't quite really work for me.
Okay, I want to get into that in a minute. Roxana, Jennifer Lawrence was on cue with Tom Power talking about her performance here. She plays a young mom struggling with her mental health. Jennifer Lawrence herself, a mom of 2 young kids. What did you think about her performance in this film?
I think that the performance is stronger than the movie, or maybe more coherent than the movie. I think that she is finally getting the opportunity to really play a character that like syncs up with her own life. I believe that this was filmed between her two children, like the births of her two children. So I think it is finally like Jennifer Lawrence not playing like a teenager saving the world in the Hunger Games and not playing these like world-weary wives in David O. Russell's films. Like she's finally sort of playing a woman who syncs up with her age. And I think that that in and of itself gives the performance like a level of authenticity that I thought was really strong. I think that her ability to go feral, for want of a better term, is like very captivating, right? She's like crawling around, she's masturbating while brandishing a knife, she's like mixing her breast milk with ink. It's doing a lot of like very off the wall sort of physical things that I think she throws herself into very well. But I think that the movie overall is like too invested in sort of this surreal atmosphere to let what she is going through have enough gravity. So I think the performance is really great. I think it's like a real height for Jennifer Lawrence. I don't know. I'm like unconvinced by the movie at large, I think.
Interesting. Jackson, this film is directed by Lynn Ramsey. She's known for 2011's We Need to Talk About Kevin, critically acclaimed film that also sort of grapples with these darker themes around motherhood. How did Lynn's sort of vision for this one work for you?
Well, there's this genre of movie that I really love that I've taken to calling sad men stealing sad kids. And it's the movie in which a adult, usually a man who is very sad and disaffected, gets custody of a child kind of against his will. And then he ends up finding that the kid is even more sad and more deserving of love. And he sacrifices himself for that kid, either by dying or like giving up his freedom and sacrificing that freedom. There's Hunt for the Wilder People, there's Up, there's Coco, there's Drive, there's The Holdovers, there's Paris, Texas. There's so many of them. But it works because like in a patriarchal society, we don't necessarily implicitly believe men are owed domesticity and they must take care of kids. So when they're doing it, it's kind of seen as altruistic. In other movies like that have a woman in that role, there is this patriarchal assumption that women are indebted to taking care of people. They are indebted to motherhood. They are indebted to raising this child. And some of that dramatic tension then comes in these movies when there's a reason why they can't or won't do that. We need to talk about Kevin. You have like a psychopathic child. So the dramatic tension there is in her inability to connect. This movie does a similar thing in that with the postpartum depression of this character, she is not connecting with her with those in her life. She's not really able to take care of those in her life or take care of herself. I do find that very interesting, and I do find unearthing and unpacking why we believe that women need to take care of others and need to be domestic partners is so baked into society. But I don't think that the through line is necessarily all the way there. And there's a big dramatic punch at the end that I really think lands that kind of narrative. But up until that point, it does feel a little bit messy to me and hard to really get what they're going for in the movie.
Now, Teri, you mentioned like Roxana and Jackson did, that the film didn't quite work for you, but I'm curious to know what you sort of think Ramsey's getting at with films like We Need to Talk About Kevin and Die My Love, about some of these themes of motherhood that maybe we haven't explored in film quite yet.
Well, I'll talk about what I think, why this Die My Love didn't really work for me. And it's like Jackson and Roxana said, I mean, this is a movie I think you can hear in all of us. We wanted to like this movie more than we did because we want stories like this. We want to see complicated women. We want to see the challenges, the emotional challenges. For me, what this did is kind of a disservice to women who have actually experienced or are experiencing postpartum. They really trauma dump onto Grace, the Jennifer Lawrence character. She has this big, traumatic childhood event. We see kind of hints of her, mental illness or, bipolar, whatever, before she has the baby. And it's kind of giving this underlying thing of like postpartum depression isn't enough. And I as somebody who's had friends with postpartum, as somebody who is a woman, I don't have children, but I can imagine, and I've seen people really struggle with postpartum, and that I struggled with that kind of underlying thing of we have to throw more onto her because it can't just be about postpartum. And that frustrated me as a viewer watching this. And I think that is something that surprised me in a Lynn Ramsey movie, because we need to talk about Kevin to address your question directly, Amil. She did stick squarely to the event of what happened to that mother with her son. And in Die My Love, I feel like she threw in all these other things because somewhere there's an idea that maybe it's not enough what Grace is going through when she becomes a mom. But I will say, and I agree with Roxana and I agree with Jackson as well, these performances are really, really spectacular. You know, we mentioned not only Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson, who's a revelation in this. I think he's doing things in this movie we've never seen him do. And I think to Roxana's point, he's also being met where he is as an adult performer for the first time. But also we have Sissy Spacek being spectacular, and a Nick Nolte performance that is that will definitely stay with you.
Okay, well, we got to leave that there. Die My Love is in theaters now, and you can catch that interview with Jennifer Lawrence on the Q podcast. We've got one more release we want to talk about. Take a listen to this.
We are out of time. I have another patient coming, so.
Wait, now? What about the 10-minute warning?
Yeah, I just wasn't paying attention.
You didn't respond to the email that I sent you about my dream.
I don't respond to my clients' dream emails.
I know you have a lot on your plate, but she's getting better, and the rest of it is totally temporary.
I know. The problem with that logic, though, is that I'm not a housewife. I work, too.
That's a bit of the trailer of If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. Rose Byrne stars as a woman navigating relationships with her daughter's mystery illness, her absent husband, and her therapist, played by Conan O'Brien. Now, Teri, you have said that this film should almost come with a disclaimer about some of the triggering themes. Well, what did you mean by that statement? Tell me about what you mean when you said that.
Well, firstly, that trailer makes this movie sound a lot funnier and quippier than it is. It is not funny. It is not quippy. This has stayed with me since TIFF, and I saw about 40 movies during TIFF, so it's hard for something to stay with you when you see that many movies. There's not a false moment in this, and what I meant by that disclaimer is for anybody, and I say this very, very seriously, for anybody who's had a special needs or sick child or is experiencing that right now, there is not a false moment in this movie. And I do think people should know that before going in. The walls are closing in on Rose Byrne, and we feel that through every second of this film. I think there were moments like my legs were like crunched up under my chin watching this movie. You feel her desperation, you feel her sadness, you feel her anger, and you feel her deep, deep, deep exhaustion. Her exhaustion of everything. I mentioned trauma loading earlier with Die My Love. This is not that. This is an absolutely empathetic and compassionate look at how a devastating illness can be for caregivers, and especially working mothers.
Jackson, this is also Conan O'Brien's sort of first big dramatic role. I think a lot of people have been sort of waiting to see what he does after all the, twists and turns of his career. How did you think he fared in this film?
Oh, I think he did great. I mean, I think there's something in the comedian's back pocket, like in general, that makes them great actors. I don't know why. We also saw Mae Martin with their new show Wayward, and they were fantastic in that. We saw Tyler, the Creator, who I kind of think as a comedian who actually made music. He's in Marty Supreme. He's fantastic in that. And we saw Jim Jeffries in Him this year as well, which is not a good movie, but Jim Jeffries is great in it. And he has this stand-up routine where he's talking about how he's going into the world of an actor being like, there are 10-year-olds who have won an Oscar. If the best person in your field is a 10-year-old, maybe what you're doing isn't that hard, which I don't know if I agree with, but maybe comedians have an ability to not be so precious with their performances. They're willing to be embarrassed or something. I don't know what it is, but Conan O'Brien has whatever it is, and I think he did great in this movie.
I love Conan. I'm always rooting for Conan. Roxana, I want to go back to some of these themes around motherhood that we've been talking about in the show, whether it's, Die My Love or this performance that Rose Byrne gives in If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. And both of these films are really grappling with a more complicated picture of motherhood than perhaps we're used to seeing. What do you think these two films add to this sort of growing canon of films around this idea?
Well, they're very different movies, which Teri sort of spoke to. Like, Die My Love is very surreal, it's very diffuse. I think that the third act really complicates the timeline. So you're sort of struggling to get like the larger, broader portrait of the movie. But I think what is very clear is sort of the suggestion that like there is this assumption of caregiving within motherhood, this assumption of something in your biology that just like automatically turns on after you have a baby. And Die My Love really rejects that. Like, she has changed, the experience has changed her. She is a good mother. I think she's probably a better mother in that film than Robert Pattinson's character as a father. But she's stuck, right? Like, she is stuck otherwise as a creative individual. And I do think that that is sort of what we're seeing in this canon, which is that, like, yes, you probably can do the things that are forced upon you as a mother. Like, you can caregive because your husband isn't going to be there. You can be the person making the decisions. But how does it like freeze you otherwise? And how does it stop you from sort of growing as an individual? And I think that's also what Rose Byrne's character in If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You is going through, right? Like, as she said in the clip we listened to, she also works. Like, she has this identity outside of motherhood that is not being fed through that experience. And we've had like a couple of other movies like this. Like, I think about like Night Bitch with Amy Adams, or like we had Tully with Charlize Theron. And those are also sort of navigating this question of like, what is it about being a mother that changes you in the eyes of society and then also changes you in the eyes of yourself? And I think that changing for yourself thing is what these two movies are doing in very different ways. Like, If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You is a far more like linear, straightforward sort of film. I think it's served by that approach a little better than Die My Love is. But that's what we're really seeing here. And I think it's like a really fascinating way to, yes, get at the tension of like, what does society want from these women? But what do the women want from themselves? And I love the exploration of that question that these movies are doing.
Teri, I just have about a minute left here, but I wonder if there's something about this moment that we're in that has allowed us to be more open to a different vision of motherhood than the sort of perfect Stepford wife that we're so often used to seeing.
Yeah, female filmmakers. I mean, we have two female filmmakers making these movies, also with primarily female writers. There's a male writer on Die My Love. And I think it is the key to telling the stories. The idea of, Amil's Stepford wife, or in my mind, like this idea of pink and blue teddy bears being what motherhood is all about, is no longer the story of what is being told. And these stand out because still so few movies are made and written by women. So we can have these long conversations because it is new and it is fresh and it is exciting. Even if something doesn't exactly hit the mark, like Die My Love, there's still so much to talk about because we haven't seen something like this before. And that is, that is a testament to why we need diversity in storytelling, why we need diversity in filmmaking across the board. That's why we get these movies.
I love that, Teri. And I love the idea that we are more open to greater and broader descriptions of motherhood. I'm a mom of 3, and so rarely do I watch a show or watch a film that seems to capture the complexity, the exhaustion, the just sort of sheer sacrifice that mother not just demands, but seems to command from society. So it's nice to know that we are expanding our idea of what a mother can be and who a mother can be. So really appreciate all of you taking the time to unpack that with us today.
Having me.
Thanks.
If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You is in theaters now. We got to leave it there. Teri Hart is an entertainment reporter with Super Channel in Toronto and the host of the podcast, The Heart of It All. Roxana Hadadi is a critic at Vulture. She is in Columbia, Maryland. And Jackson Weaver is an entertainment reporter with CBC. He was also in Toronto. And that is it for the show today. I'm Amil Niazi sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. Elamin is back on Monday. In the meantime, thanks for listening.